Alright, lads and lasses, welcome along. Week 2, New York. New York taxis. It's kind of married, isn't it? Really? I think, we managed to show 100 plus million rows. As you're aware, didn't quite go according to plan. We did come up with an issue. Found it later on. To be honest, I sat and I thought, should we just scrap the whole video and reshoot it? And I decided actually it was better to go ahead, hold my hands up. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, well. Right. Use it as a teaching moment, though. Every moment's a teaching moment, isn't it? Yeah? So let's kind of see, Do you remember what we've kind of done so far? So we went through, we've had a look, done some data flows, pulled through one main data flow, our core data flows. So we've got a time dimension set up and a dates dimension. Brilliant stuff to have. Also showed where you got the data from the New York data sources or the New York data feed. Right, and then we've built the main data flow for our stuff. Right, what's happened as far as this is concerned? Let's revisit a bit into what it is. Right, basically, I went through. We did all the prep for this in Power BI Desktop. Right, that's really where I do most of this stuff. Keeps it out of the Power BI service with other videos going ahead. Right, it's important to keep everything clear. So that's my bad. I've got that. There's a couple of things that we did in the build as we went into the production, into the video set that I probably did I didn't do in Power BI Desktop, and I'm sure that had an impact on it. But again, that's part of a teaching moment that I've already got planned for later on. So the main thing we hit was there's a 2-hour limit, right, in terms of how much data you can pull through into a data flow, right? Oh man, it's ruined everything. The whole thing doesn't work. Isn't the case, right? I thought actually the solution that this gets actually gives us a really good chance to actually look a little bit and learn and think, all right, okay, so in the real world, how would we cope with this? What would we do if we wanted to proceed down this route? Right? And it's actually really simple. So what I found was green taxis came through, no bother, just straight away, right? It's a smaller data sample, way less journeys in green taxis. I don't know why. I'm sure some New Yorker in the comments say why. There's less green taxis, more yellow, what the difference is. Green came through fine, no bother, right? Yellow, 2020 came through fine, no bother. It's like there's been not much going on in 2020. I don't know why. Why would not much be happening in 2020? Right? But for 2019, I had to split it into 3. Now, that split into 3, and the way I've handled it is we've now got 5 data flows, right? In theory, I could look into it and see, well, could we actually put all that into one data flow and have 5 tables within it? And if it was something I was really keen to do and sort out properly, I'd look more into it. One of the things that I was thinking through, though, is I think this leads us into one of the areas about premium. So in premium, you have the ability to effectively, you can turn data lake components into database components. Right? Modern processing is what they call it. And what it's really doing is one of the limitations, weaknesses, whatever you want to say about it, right, of a data lake is effectively you're converting data in files. Now that's grand if it's stuff coming from out and about in the business world. If it's stuff coming from a database though, people tend to get a bit like, naughty, you're taking me database stuff and you're putting it into a CSV file. What are you doing with me stuff, man? So now, if you're thinking about it in terms of a file, there's no way of part reading the file, if that makes sense, from the structure that you get. So you end up having to read the whole file to then put that into memory somewhere and then find the bits you want if you're trying to filter stuff out. So it's a really inefficient way of reading data in. So one of the things people have tried to do is to use things like query editor, and you can see where we can filter the files, and I've shown you how we can filter down the right files. Do stuff like that to make sure you're just picking the right files that you need for your area, so you're not then having to filter it down, which then means the challenge is how do we inject those as the right files that are never going to need to be filtered. It then leads you to, well, if we're going to make this available to everyone, that doesn't work. So Microsoft's response has been, well, what we'll do is we'll put in like a bit of a stealth SQL database structure to it as well, which is very good and very useful. But that's not going to help you with this. So, but what I wanted you to see was that this isn't a huge issue. Tell you what, let's go to this ugly thing here, let's go to my face, right, and let's crack on and have a look-see and see exactly what's going on behind the scenes, okay? Alright, so here we are, yeah? Dataset 9, New York taxis. If you have a look in here, you'll see each of these, they're all basically the same. Let's go look at the New York tax into the yellow one so you can kind of see what I mean. I'm just going to open this in a new tab just to see if we can, let's get a couple of these running just so we can have a look at them. See them differently, yeah? 5th and 6th, sorry, 5th to 8th, so May to June, so May to August, and Jan to April. Right, if we have a look at them, you can see it's exactly the same, it's just a clone, which is why I'm saying potentially you'd be able to get away with having 1 to 4, 5 to 8. It would be, you know, if you really were strongly minded about it and you had a business need for it, we could look into, can we do it? Is there a way of bringing them together, right? What we've got here, and the step that I've done, is I've added a filter here, yeah? So I've added this second filter rows, and the only argument I've got in here, and I've just named them, is 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah? So we've specifically said, these are the 4 files I want. It's not the most efficient, there's other things we could do. You know, if it was a case of saying, this is going to become our lasting solution, I would probably try and add a column at this point. Bearing in mind this is where this is, you're not going to see a big issue with that. It's just, you know, this is your raw list of file names, isn't it? So adding a column here to say, based on this value, if it's 01, 04, you know, do something like that, you could probably come up with something nice and cute and then work out which ones of those you wanted to filter. Right? If you really wanted to. If I had no better doing my life, right? Those would be the sorts of things you could do. In terms of this, really when I was sitting through and saying, right, so what's the workload that this would add for me if I was to be an admin for it? And it's not that bad, because in theory, as long as we've started this chain, because it's a filter, if there's no records in there, it's not going to cause any problems, is it? So if we can here, for example, click this, so I'm going to add a clause, name equals, .111 CSV, click OK, right? That's still going to work, okay? It's not going to break it, is it? And because that's the case, it makes it very stable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One was missing, I'm sure someone's gone missing. But that stability is what you're going to use and what you're going to rely on when it comes, or when you were starting to look at what load you'd be adding. Because in theory, I could pre-stage the next 4 months. You know, and now we're up to the end of this, I need to pre-stage the next 4 months, set them up. There's no records returned, that's fine. There's no records returned, that's fine. There's no records returned, that's all fine. Yeah, everything is still going to run, everything is still going to work. So it's not going to add this huge, urgent piece of work to my cycle. So it's not a huge problem for me. There are better ways, and obviously it would be great if we could get it to all work without having to deal with anything else. But definitely this, it works. I can show you if we come back to here. Look at this rows 2. Again, we've got 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. It's quick enough, it's easy enough to deal with. Okay? So that's kind of one of the things we can do. Yeah, that's how I had to get it to work. Right? Got it in, it worked, and I thought, oh, do I want to really, as I say, I did nearly reshoot everything, but I thought, no, I will leave it. Because the other nice thing is, potentially, Because these are legacy or archivable data sets, part of my workload could well be just to stop the refresh on them. That, you know, this one here, January to April, if we look at the scheduled refresh, there's a refresh scheduled on it. I could choose to turn it off because we know this data isn't going to change. So I'm starting to get to some mindsets in here where we're only refreshing the data or potentially the volatile tables of data for it. So 2020. So if 2020 is updated and there's now suddenly a July data set available, it'll then pull that in automatically. Right? Then I'd know in the event that I get a timeout event, I need to do something to split it. But as far as normal work was concerned, I could have already pre-staged that and preempted that with 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12 for 2020 and have those already in. And as long as I make sure in the next phase that we do when we start to do the build, I don't put those in as my first set of the append, right? So that we actually have a proper column set up here, I'm good to go. So we know green, for example, is always going to have stuff. So if we put green in first and then gone through the yellows, so in reverse chronological order, we'd get there. Right, and I'd then have something that would work and it will be quite happy to pull that all together and make that build. Okay, but I thought it's really important to show you what's happened and that it's not the be all and end all, and if something terrible like that happens, it doesn't make it something terrible. It's something you can easily manage, we can easily work through, and we can easily make sure that there's other ways of delivering what has been required by my management. Right? All good? Champion. So, week 2. A couple of things I'm going to do. I've been sitting thinking about it. We'll talk about the people piece at the end, but I'm not going to do it. Right? It's in here, but I just thought I can't get behind enough to be comfortable doing it again. Right? We'll talk about it, and you'll know when that I can put it in, and if we want to do it, we can look at it. But at this point, I don't think there's a need to. So the 2 things we're going to do today is we're going to look at the city map. So we've got a map of New York we've got to pull in, haven't we? Right? Because frankly, looking at the data, 1, 2, location 1 to drop off in location 7 isn't going to help me without, right? What does that mean? Yeah, I haven't got a clue. And then we've obviously got to go through and set out that Power BI desktop build to combine all that information into a single Power BI file where we can look at our yellows and we can look at our greens and we can be like, oh, brilliant, I understand exactly what's going on with New York taxis. Where are people going from? Where are they going to? Where are the busy times? Where are the quiet times? All that stuff, yeah? And then, as I say, we're going to have a talk. Is it worth putting in the people so we can start looking? Bear in mind, if you remember our people data set, I've got 1,000 names. So potentially we could put in 1,000 taxi drivers, maybe 50 for green taxis and the other 950 for yellows. Aye. But I'm not sold on it. You know, I'm not looking at it going, well, I think the data set's too big, 1,000 is going to look ridiculous. I don't know. So we'll see where we get to with this combining sources and doing the other stuff. And if it's a problem in week 3 or week 4, we'll pull in the people, right? But the city map, what do we have to do with that? It's not too hard, right? There's a shapefile in the New York data, okay? So what we can do is we can then get the shapefile and we have to convert it because at the moment what's in the shapefile is the ArcGIS stuff. Now, if you remember, I did a video, I'll put a link to it down below or maybe on the YouTube thing somewhere on this page, right? That'll show you what I think of the maps, right? But basically, if you're using ArcGIS, right, any of the other platforms or map options that Power BI has, you probably aren't going to use, right? Because ArcGIS, it's like the big daddy of like mapping stuff. Businesses who've invested in ArcGIS, they have invested significantly and they are unlikely to be swayed by the pretty pictures that Bing Maps can put in front of them, right? ArcGIS, it allows you to do so much. So I think that's fine. For us though, we didn't have ArcGIS. We've just got Bing Maps or Shape Maps or any of the stuff that's available to us. So what we need to do is to create a shape file that's going to map the data from the Power BI CSV file that we got, or the CSV file that we got from New York, into something that's going to fit on a shape map in Power BI. And we'll go through and we'll do all that. And then once we've got all that, I can show you how we can import it into a blank Power BI file. And then we've got our JSON file that will be ready to go into a file when we start to build reports and that. Right? Champion. Let's have a look at what that looks like, yeah? Right, so you remember the New York Dataset page? Aye? Of course you do, yeah? None of you are going to forget anything like that, are you? So we've got this here, way down, it's still only in June, isn't it? Way down here, got your lookup table that you need to download, you've got your shape file that you're going to need. It says CSV, it's actually a zip file, okay? Once you've downloaded them two, right, the fun can begin. So the first thing you remember is you've got to go to MapShaper. Okay, mapshaper.org, and I'll put a link to it down below. Okay. Next thing you need, I've just got this set up here, the zip file that we downloaded, and we've got the CSV file. Okay. If we have a look on the CSV file, just so that we can have a quick peek at it, right? And you can see I've got location IDs, the borough, the zone, and then the service zone. Nothing exciting, nothing too dramatic. With this, what we can do is we can just drag the zip file straight onto the page there, yeah, and choose to import it. And you'll see I've now got this brilliant map of New York. Okay, nice shape map of New York. As I said, it's not going to look like New York in terms of landmarks and stuff like that, but you've got, you know, if you know New York, you know, well, that's Manhattan Island, and Anna, that man, isn't that New Amsterdam somewhere down there, right? Hey man, yeah, it's like I'm doing all right with this, learning all this stuff. If you took this, right, and this is where it's just, Power BI, come on lads, right, it doesn't work, okay? What you need to do is go to console. In console, minus proj WGS 84, okay? And that changes the projection slightly. Okay, this is one of those things, right? There is no logic that I can find as to why I have to do this step, right? I'm sure somebody, you know, a lot cleverer than I am, probably someone who's been using ArcGIS for a number of years and knows their mapping stuff inside and out would be able to explain it to you. But for me, why do I have to do that, right? If you don't do it, what you find is when you bring the file into Power BI, into the shape editor, right, it will sort of work, but you get a weird point off in the corner. The next thing you got to do is hit export, okay? And what you want is the topo JSON. That's you done with the map. So that was pretty painless, really, wasn't it? You know, we took our CSV file, or our map file that we had, or files, because it's a zip file, and in the zip file there's lots of other files, ArcGIS and all this sort of stuff, right? And we're able to convert that into this topological JSON file format that can then be recognized by Power BI Desktop. So if we have a look in Power BI Desktop now, right, and this is the data set I've just prepared. I'll show you it, there's nothing secret in it. I've imported, you can see here, I've imported that CSV file, yeah, that we talked through, that I showed you, right, and I've written a function, because hey, why not, yeah, writing functions is dead simple. The issue you've got, one of the things that you find happens in Power BI, if you try and do like a random column, so number.random for a column, they'll all have the same number. So I've written a function and it just generates a list with one record in it, okay? And then for here, I've said, well, let's call the custom function, it gives away a list, extract the list values. I've then done it again, we're going to extract those, divided the two together, because they're below 1, each of them, right, to then get a nice number. And then I've just chosen 17 to randomly multiply that number by, and then made that a whole number. So we've now got just multiplication. Multiplication is a list of numbers, isn't it, right, that we can then use just to show what the map looks like. Okay, yeah, nothing else, no other reason for it. So if we go in and we say, well, I want a shape map. Here is my shape map. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to give it the location. And the location for these is going to be the location ID. You'll see it'll pick the US, right? This is an issue with shape maps. Don't have anything. You can't go in shape, pick a custom shape. Okay? I'll show you it again. Delete that. Shape map. Go through to here. There's nowhere that I can add a shape. Right? I can't do that. Drop in my location ID. Suddenly I get a shape. So if it goes to a map, it comes to a map. Right? Finish JSON is the one that I know works. Oh, I see, brilliant. So this is the sort of thing that you get if you didn't do the right thing. Here we go. Add a map. It was going up the maps. Finished. Okay. We can work with this, can't we? Yeah. So we've got this nice map here. Okay. And the way this shows stuff is if we look at multiplication. Yeah. So we can see we've got information in there now. So this is the kind of way it'll work. You'll have areas that have a darker hue to them that have got more traffic, yeah, and if we refreshed it, it'll go away and it'll generate something else, yeah, and you can see this is the sort of thing that we'll get when New York Taxi data plotted in. So far so good, everyone's still happy? Champion. Alright, so the last piece of today is going to be pulling this all in, isn't it? So what we've got to do is we've got to connect up to Power BI Desktop and then go from Power BI Desktop, open each data, for each data flow, pull out the table. So we then have 5 tables that we've kind of pulled through. Remember, none of them we're going to load directly, because what we're going to do is we're going to append all of those into one table, and then from that table, we've got our main data set. That's going to be the main piece of information that we need, right? The next thing, we're going to add our core data. So we'll put in the calendar table and the time table, right, and we'll see how it goes. Last thing I might do is I might just prep in. I'm going to drop in probably the lookup table that we've just used for the maps. Just drop that in, just because I know it'll be useful, right? And we'll see how we're going. So where do we go now? Let's crack on our into Power BI Desktop. So Power BI Desktop. Well, here we are. What do I need to do? So we're going to choose to get data from another source. In this case, we're going to choose Power Platform. It's going to be a Power BI data. We'll connect to that. See, it'll go away and it'll think about the data flows that I've got, that I'm allowed to connect to. I'm going to pick 09. You can see I can pick these. I can open them all. And I can say I'll have all of them. Right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to say transform data. Okay. Power BI is going to go away, create the connections to all of them. I'm going to tick or untick the enable load. And the next step, remember what we always say? So we've got our data loaded through now, or the sample data loaded through. So we're going to append the queries as new. 3 or more tables. So we've got all 5 there. Click OK. The NYC Taxi. Yeah, suddenly, that's it. I've got my data set. I've got my build. Job's a good one. Alright, so we've got that pulled in. So the next thing we need to do, bring in our date table and our time table. So what we're going to do, new query, recent sources, Power BI Dataflows, and this time we're going to pick from data core, and you see we've just got calendar in there. I'm going to pick calendar. Calendar, we didn't need all the years, so all we're going to need for calendar is I'm going to do numbers filter where it equals 2019 or it equals 2020. Right? There's other ways you could have done this, or I could have done this. You know, this is the quickest and easiest way to do it. Me times, there are years, calendar, there we go. Right? So from here, I've now built and combined all my data flows into one. So if we now hit close and apply, you'll see, we'll find out just how many rows of data we've pulled in. Close and apply. Alright, so we've managed to load all the data in, yeah? Some of the data, so it's the screen snip I took as we're getting towards the end of the data pull, yeah? So what, 40 gigabytes nearly of data pulled in. How are we going to manage that, you see? Power BI's got a 10 gigabyte limit. That's compressed. This is uncompressed. So what I've actually ended up with is a file. It's about 1 gigabyte, 1.1 gigabytes, right? But if we have a look, let's go back through here, have a look, see, we can see if we look at our NYC Taxi data, that we've got a fair few rows there, right? 108 million. Did promise 100 plus million rows of data. I think I've met that promise, you know. You're welcome, everyone. What I've done, just to kind of pull a few things together, and obviously before we start doing the full proper Power BI build that we'll do next week, is I thought, let's have a look, see at kind of some of these things, just so you can see that just because we've got all these rows of data doesn't suddenly make it unresponsive, or we can have a little bit of a review of it. So I've pulled in one with shape map, and we can now see the shape of New York City with a little added bit for Newark Airport on the far side, aye. We can also then start to track through what's going on with it. So we can see for Newark, there's been 20 million in terms of taxis, $20 million, $20.46 million in terms of drop-offs at Newark Airport, right? And we can see January 2020, it was higher than previous year, and then it's tailed off. Don't know what's happened in 2020. Something weird's going on. If anyone knows, put it down below, right? And then just to find out just really how bad the situation is, I had a quick look here, right? And in the Financial District North, we can see there's been 19.4 million in drop-offs. And we can see it's even picking up across June, right? Those of you that don't know, that's where the Continental is. So I accept gold coins as well, by the way. So we've done all this, we've pulled it in, we've got 100 million rows of data in, yeah? And you can see from the way this is working that 100 million rows of data doesn't slow Power BI down that much, yeah? We can click, we can drag, we can drop, we can do what we want to do, and we can really see what's going on when. So 100 million rows of data. Next time you wondered, you know, or someone says to you, oh, Power BI doesn't do much, you know, I can't really cope with much data. Just send them this video series, man. Say, look, 100 plus million rows of data. It's not phased it. It's fine, yeah? Don't forget, Power BI desktop, I'm running screen recording software, I'm doing all this sort of thing. It's not phased. It's just the, whatever, man. I can take it. Proper Geordie software, innit? So, don't forget, like and subscribe down below, right? Next week we'll actually do some proper build of the report pack. We'll actually start to get a report pack built. And we'll start to look and see how we can do things, writing some measures, doing the bits and pieces with calculation groups, because that's going to be really important for these. You know, you want to be able to compare year-on-year changes. We might look at some other things as well in terms of what periodicity. It's all going to be great, I think. Yeah, so we'll do all this, we'll keep looking at it, keep going forward with it, and we'll keep going on. Right? So, don't forget, like and subscribe, take care, and we'll catch you all next week. Ta-da!